Well, welcome back once again. As you know, or as you pretty much figured out by watching the previous videos, for those of you who have been keeping up with this series, all the heavy lifting has been done concerning this chassis. From here on out, it's just little detail work. I've got to put in a resistor and a capacitor and arrange for this to have a grid cap wire, which goes to the 2A6 tube, which plugs into there. And initially that entire setup was right here, mounted on top of the chassis. And let me see, I think it was this hole right here. That was the screw hole that held a bracket, which held the whole mess together. Well, you know, we're not going to do it that way. Let me show you what I'm talking about first. Over here on the schematic, you can see that this wire going down and into the wiper on the volume control and going to this resistor to ground has not been highlighted in orange. That's because we haven't installed it yet. There's the grid cap to the 2A6, by the way. And you'll also notice that there is a wire wrapped around and around and around this thing over to ground. Now, we had this situation earlier on another tube. And we're going to go ahead and take, you know, we're going to convert this here to a coax cable, just like we did before. And we're going to take this capacitor and this resistor, and we're not going to mount it on top of the chassis. We're going to mount it underneath the chassis. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take this old piece of little coax, just like we did over here, coming out of this IF can. Okay, we're going to use a coax cable. Let me move this out of here so we get a little better lighting here. And the coax cable is going to go down through this hole right here that originally held the entire assembly on top of the chassis. I'm going to stick it down underneath there, right down through the bottom if I can ever get it there. Let me see here. Yeah, right there. It's going to go on down, and then we're going to hook up that capacitor and that resistor, and then we're going to have the grid cap wire that goes over here to the 2A6 tube. So how am I going to do that? Well, here's the cable, that little coax cable coming through the bottom of the radio. And I need to hook it to the wiper right here, which would be that red wire right there. And I need to hook it to a capacitor to or a resistor to ground. I need to put a capacitor on there. And this red wire, by the way, will be removed and be replaced by this end of the cable. But we're going to do all of this using a terminal strip. I'm going to fasten the terminal strip right there to get my ground. Then it's just a matter of running a couple of, a short cap over to here, and then from there a cap over to this ground, or a resistor to this ground. Everything going to be kind of neat down in there, and I kind of like the fact that I've got two grounding spots to choose from. I just installed the terminal strip to put in this resistor and this capacitor, and then a small coax cable that'll come up and serve as our grid cap wire. And now I say grid cap. Anytime they say grid cap, they're talking about control grid. Alright, this little deal right here is a wire that they, remember, had wrapped around the outside of a standard insulated wire and then hooked it to ground. They just went round and round and round it, that's all. So, what's going to be that part on the coax wire will be the shield. The shield will be grounded. So let's see if I hooked it up. What I need is see if I hooked it up properly. From the wiper, I need a capacitor, which is the center. It would be the center lug on the volume control. I need a capacitor hooked to a resistor, and the other end of the resistor hooked to ground. Let's see if I did that right. Let me see here. Well, there's the capacitor hooked to the wiper, which is the center lug on the volume control, over to a resistor, and the resistor is hooked to the ground lug. Alright, we got that right. Capacitor to resistor, the other end of the resistor hooked to ground. Just what we needed. So far so good. Now let's go back up here. Now the center connector, the center wire in that coax is going to come down and hook to where that capacitor and that resistor come together, right there. Right where they join together. And then of course the shield will be hooked to the same ground as this resistor is. Ground is ground, right? You bet. Alright, let's see if we got the coax cable right. Now here's the coax cable coming in, right here. And I've got the center conductor hooked to where the resistor and the capacitor come together right there. Oh, cool, got it made. And then of course the shield has been stripped back, tinned with solder, and connected to the same ground as the resistor is. That's the ground down there. We can consider this part done, but we still have more details to go. For those of you who follow my videos, you know that one of our projects, maybe two of them, I'm not sure, maybe all of them, all of the projects we've done in the past, I've always stated that when you get down toward the end of the project and you're starting to zero in on the finish line, that is not a time to speed up. That's when you need to slow down. That's when you make most of your mistakes. When you say, oh yeah, we're getting there, boy, I'm going to hurry up and get this done and plug it in and fire it up and make things happen. That's when the mistakes happen. Slow down at the end. Look at everything. Test everything. Go back over what you've done. Make sure you didn't make any mistakes. Here's a case in point. Now, I have the 3 antenna wires bundled together and in this clamp. Let me get a light over here. Maybe we can see it a little better. They're in this metal clamp right here. And, they stick out here, and all I have to do now is hook the antenna wires up appropriately to where they go. The problem is they're loose. They're loose inside that thing right there. See how they move back and forth? Let me get them all up out of here, and I'll show you. This is no good. See how they move it? That sucks. That is no good. Eventually, it's going to pull the wires right off the coil. Okay? No good. We're going to have to fix that, so I'm going to take that back off. I'm going to put some tape or something around there to where it's nice and snug, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it back on and tighten her down to where she does not pull. We do not want that thing to be pulling like that. That's really bad. Here's how I've decided to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of heat shrink over there. I cut two pieces of heat shrink the same length. I'm going to put one over there, which I already have. I'm going to shrink it down. Then I'm going to put a second one over the top of it and shrink it down again. And that should make it fat enough to where it fits inside here. And, no wiggle room. Well, there she is. I took, like I said, 2 pieces of heat shrink, one on top of another. And now the wires are nice and secure. You can move the entire chassis with it and they will not move. That makes me feel better. I don't want any wires to be pulling off these coils and messing up these coils. What do you say we go ahead and put this tuning gear on and put the dial scale holder, and then go ahead and put the dial lights in and solder them up. Now the dial light wires will go through that hole right there by my thumb right there. Yeah, well let's put that together and see how it looks. The tuning gear has a bump on it right here. Now that's your key. The second key is the blades on the tuner have to be closed. Now I put a little bit of grease on the shaft and a little bit of grease down in the center there to make it slide better. Make sure your set screws are clear of the brass collar. And what we're going to do is this thing has to go on like this. Starts out like this. And it slides right on the shaft. If you do it any other way, you'll find it be kind of rough. Now it slides on the shaft and then this comes around like this. Remember that bump right there has got to go to the right of the neoprene wheel. And it has to butt up against it. There it goes. There it goes. Okay? Now, remember, with the blades closed, this thing has to butt right up against there, just like that. Now we'll go ahead and tighten these screws. She's on and tightened down. Now this is one of these deals where you have to kind of make your own call. Should the gear be a little bit forward or a little bit back, as it rides on that neoprene wheel down there. Or if you even have a radio that's different from this Atwater Kent that still has a tuning gear that's tuned by a wheel. You have to kind of make a good judgment. You don't want it so far back that it might rub against the front of the tuner. So you got to kind of play with it till you get it right about where you want, and then go ahead and snug it down. Later on you may have to readjust it again. Be flexible, Everything does not always work on the second or the first or second go. Sometimes it takes 4 or 5 goes. Alright, there you go. Alright, that takes care of that. Now let's go ahead and put the dial holder on. And that takes care of that. The two set screws are located at 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Go ahead and just cinch them right on down. Just don't go crazy though, don't. These are soft screws. They're not really that strong. And they are clamping against a brass shaft, so be careful. Now, once you get this thing on, this collar is not jammed back against this reflector. That reflector is going to be a little bit loose. You want it to come out just a little bit so the reflector can kind of wiggle a little bit. Let me show you. I don't know if you can see that or not. Can you see it wiggling? There's a reason for that. If I jam this collar back against the rear of the reflector, it won't be able to turn when I tune. See how it has to turn? So you don't want that to happen, okay? Alright, so be real careful with that. Alright, the next thing we have to do is put in these old dial lights. I think the black wire I put between them, the grounding wire that goes between them, I think I might have made it a little bit too long. We're going to find out here in a few seconds. Well, as expected, yep, that grounding wire runs between the two dial light sockets is a little long, but that's no problem. All I have to do is desolder it here, pull it up, strip the end of it, and resolder. Then we'll go ahead and resolder or solder these three wires down below the chassis where they're supposed to go and get rid of this old crap here. Well, that's it. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video here. I got a pretty busy weekend coming up, so I won't be able to do any work on this thing probably till next week. Tomorrow's a karate tournament right here in town, and our grandson will be coming down and competing in it. So it'll be kind of nice to see him. Then we're all going to go out for pizza afterwards. He's bringing his buddy with him, and his mom's bringing them all down. Going to have a good time. And then I have to go somewhere after that, and then back to work on Monday, and then we'll go ahead and crank back up at that time. And I appreciate everybody watching. And I hope you saw a little bit of progress made today. Down here is these are the wires going underneath and being soldered up to the band switch for the two dial lights. Kind of neat, isn't it? Incidentally, these dial lights are 2.5 volts, and if you order them from like Radio Days, they're DL41s. But I found out that my hardware store carries 2.5 volts. So I went ahead and bought a couple of those, and I hope they work. If they don't, well, I'll just have to order others. But I guess we can go ahead and call this a wrap. It's one more thing. Well, actually, a couple more things. Here's another detail that I don't like. We're going to have to do something about this. This is the grid cap wire for the, I think it's the 2A7. Yeah, the 2A7. And it's just, you know, it's just soldered on that terminal down there in that coil. That's a weak spot. That's a real weak spot. I'm going to have to figure out a way to strengthen this up so it doesn't pull on the coil, just like I did right here. So that'll be another little chore. And I'll tell you what, I'm getting a little tired of hauling these things around. Why don't we go ahead and see if we can't go ahead and put in the old filter cap cans, get them in and tighten them up. I think that'll look pretty nice. So far so good. They'll probably have to go down a little bit further. And this can over here will have to go down. I'll have to get the wires out of the way down below it. Let me go ahead and get that done, and then we'll wrap up the video. And there it is. Okay, we're really making some progress, folks. Next time, maybe we'll put the tubes in. I don't know. Until then, this is John.